Welcome to part 93 of these tutorials. Let's continue on with our mission focus. So over in your blueprints folder, in the NPCs folder over here, open up NPC_mission giver and drag that tab to the top if it's not already there. So we have a few more events that we want to fill out here. The next event we're going to work on here is a brand new event. So right click, type in custom event. We're going to call this one give missions. Give missions is going to do exactly what it says. It's going to give the player the missions. So we're going to add a new variable and it's going to be called missions to give. It's going to be an integer and it's going to be an array of integers, just like our prerequisite index. So we're going to go through the missions to give. So control drag that out and we're going to punch them into a for each loop. So hold F, click anywhere in the graph, attach missions to give into that for each loop. Let's also click the eyeball on missions to give so we can edit it while we're in the level editor. Next up, let's grab our hero reference. And from our hero reference, let's get missions. From missions, let's drag out of that and get. We want to get a reference. And the reference is going to be the array element, not the array index, because we want to refer specifically to a mission index, which is what we're going to use to set these. Now, once we've got that getter, we're also going to set, because the point of this is to set the missions to active, thus giving the player the missions. Drag out of get and set members in S mission. This type of node automatically has the pins hidden. So what we want to do is select active up here, drag loop body down to there. And then we want to set that tick there. So all missions will be default inactive, so false for active. And then once the mission is active, we will set it to true. One more step to setting a struct inside of an array. We need to set the array element. Let's grab that hero reference and missions again. We want to set array element. The target array will go there. The item will come out of struct out. And the index will also come from this reroutable over here. So I will drag that, plug it in, and then get a reroutable to clean it all up. Plug the executable in there. So that's going to set our mission to being active. But there is one more thing we need to do before we move on from this event, and that is make another variable, and this is going to be called missions to notify. This is less important to the missions themselves and more important to notifying the player, as the name suggests. It's also going to be an array of integers. Control drag that out. Drag out of that and type in add. We'll plug that in there. And once again, this is also going to be the array element, not the array index. So we will drag out of this reroutable and get a few more reroutables to clean this up. So once that's done there, back over at completed, we want to set missions given to true. So at this point, we have given the player the missions and we do not need to give them the missions again. And out of that, we will come into another event, custom event, mission notify. And we're going to call this event here, mission notify call function. And we will fill that out a bit later because we will need to jump back to our hero character for that. So the other event we'll fill out here is our mission check event. So mission check is going to check the status of the missions, as we've used it several times up here. Mission check is going to look something like this. Let's alt drag conditions met as false, because we want to freshly check if the conditions have been met. And if we've set that to true as per this, then we're going to get a false reading potentially. So we'll get missions to give, which will go through just the missions that we want to be concerned with this NPC. Grab another for each loop. And then out of that, we will need the reference hero, target missions, and getter again, and we will be plugging them back into the array element. This time, instead of setting members inside of that, we want to get those members. So we will break S mission. And the two that we're concerned with are turn in and complete. So the first thing we'll do is check if a mission is ready to turn in. We'll plug that loop body into that branch over there and plug in turn in into the condition for this particular branch. So if turn in is true, which we'll be setting elsewhere, then we will consider that as the conditions have been met and set that to true. And then we will check to see if the mission is already complete, because if we speak to this character again, we don't want them to give us the reward for the mission all over again. So out of this, we want to drag out of complete and type in not and plug that into that branch there and the executable in. And now we can hit hide unconnected pins so we can clean this up. So at this point, we want to then set those members, and we could just grab this script over here again, or we could drag out of that getter, type in set members in S mission, and we can plug it in over here and then click on that wire and run some reroutables just to keep things clean so we don't have too many nodes. So at this point, we want to set not only active in case the mission is already complete, but we also want to set complete. And then we're also going to do what we did before, which is drag in missions to notify and add. We will be clearing this array later on as they've been notified. So this is going to be a storage container that we keep emptying and refilling every single time. And that will come, you guessed it, from the array element, which will require a couple of reroutables. So once we've decided whether missions have been complete or not, whether they're ready to turn in, then we will come back down here to completed as we did up here. And this time we're going to check for a few more conditions. So remembering that conditions met would be false at this point. If we don't get past this branch, then we will grab a branch and check conditions met and plug that branch into completed down here. Then let's get missions to notify. We will get the length of missions to notify. If the length is greater than 0, in other words, is it not empty, then we will also make a decision out of that branch. And then lastly, we're going to check twice to find out whether our missions have been given on different scenarios. So we need 2 branches checking for missions given. So once you've set the first one, we can copy that and paste it again. And we are going to start conversation at the end of all of these. So these 3 setters here for conversation index 4, 5, and 6, we're going to use them. And you can either plug in start conversation into all 3 to keep it clean, or if you prefer to have an individual start conversation node for each of them, you can do that as well. So let's go through the different options here. If the conditions have been met, then we want to check to see if we have any missions to notify. We'll only have missions to notify if they're ready to turn in, but they're not complete. So if they're ready to turn in and complete, then we assume that they're complete and there's no reason to revisit them. So missions to notify at this point should only be populated if we're telling the player that they've finished a mission, which then leads to our first branch for missions given. So assuming that this is greater, we have to notify the player that they've successfully completed a mission. And if you remember, that's dialogue 5. So 5 is to turn in the mission. And then out of that, we were going to start conversation. So if we come out of missions to notify with nothing, then the player's already finished the missions and had that conversation, which is conversation index 6. So out of false of the branch checking for the mission notify length, we will set the conversation index to 6 and start the conversation. And then lastly, if the conditions haven't been met, then we'll fire off dialog option 4, which is we have yet to complete the mission criteria. So at this point, we set it to 4 and start the conversation, thus using all of our conversation indexes. And if you are confused about what the conversation indexes mean, then you can come over to data, you can click on d_dialog, and there is the template for what they mean. So that's another 2 events populated. I'm sorry that we can't test them right now to check that they're working, but this entire system kind of needs to be built, which I've tried to avoid as much as humanly possible in this tutorial series, but sometimes there's no avoiding it. We're actually pretty close to getting this particular blueprint done as well. So hopefully by the next episode, we can start thinking about what we need to do in the actual world. But because we've run out of time, I will compile and save there and see you guys in the next episode.